He blames me for driving away the person he loves. He resents me for forcing him to marry someone like me, who is physically challenged, making the famous young master of the Anderson family in New York the subject of ridicule. But after I pass away, he will regret his past indifference. This has been one of countless messages from Olivia I've received this year. Your husband is drunk. Come to Manhattan 401 to pick him up. I stood at the door of the private room. I saw a thin person sitting in Ethan's lap, who was leisurely being fed drinks. My expression darkened. He doesn't look drunk at all. Maybe it's because I arrived. The previously noisy private room suddenly fell silent. Ethan heard the sound. He turned to look at the door. When he saw it was me, his brows immediately furrowed. His face clearly showed displeasure. Seeing him like this, I understood in my heart. So I had my assistant push me away. Messages from Olivia kept coming in one after another. What's going on since you're here? Why didn't you bring him back? Emily, are you just going to watch your husband hold another woman? What's wrong with you today? If it were in the past, seeing this situation, I would definitely bring Ethan home. But today, I suddenly don't want to do that anymore, because I recognized the person he was holding. Even though she was flushed from drinking, her features still resembled Sophia's, Ethan's first love, the one he once loved deeply. Even though she married someone else a year ago on a certain night a year ago, Ethan was drunk out of his mind. I helped him pat his back to help him feel better after throwing up. It was then I heard him murmur with a sob, Sophia is getting married. She doesn't want me anymore. She doesn't want me anymore. He stared at me fiercely. Speak. It's all your fault. If it weren't for you, Sophia wouldn't have left me. At that moment, I felt a twinge of heartache. But more than that, I was secretly pleased. I thought, without Sophia, maybe our relationship could go back to how it was. But until today, I finally understood. Without Sophia, there will be other women. My relationship with Ethan can never go back to the way it was. At 3:30 in the morning, he finally returned home. I sat in the living room, holding a glass of red wine. I hadn't slept yet. I originally thought he wouldn't come back tonight, because of the woman beside him. She looked a lot like Sophia. I was pondering in my mind. Ethan had quietly walked up to me. I snapped back to reality. My hand holding the wine glass trembled involuntarily. I quickly pretended nothing was wrong. I took a sip of wine. I choked on the sourness of the red wine and started coughing. I quickly turned my head away. I didn't want Ethan to see me like this. He clearly noticed my embarrassment. After a moment, he scoffed with disdain. Say it, Emily. If you can't drink, then don't force yourself. You think that if you're drunk, I will sympathize with you. After saying that, he walked into the room without looking back, leaving me with a cold silhouette. He only guessed part of it correctly. I really don't handle alcohol well, but today I'm doing this. It's not because I'm trying to imitate Sophia. He already has a partner like Sophia. If I were to imitate her, that would be too boring. Thinking about it this way, I suddenly felt particularly annoyed inside. I secretly decided, tomorrow I must give Olivia a good lesson. It's all her bad idea that made me drown my sorrows in alcohol. Ever since that night, Ethan hasn't been to the karaoke bar and clubs for almost half a month. Olivia messaged me to ask, is your Ethan planning to settle down with you? Does Ethan want to live a good life? Maybe, but definitely not with me. I looked at the photo in my hand. I sighed. I sent a message to Olivia. He hasn't come back for half a month. This morning, the assistant gave me these photos. These were taken by him following Ethan these past few days. In the photos, Ethan is intimately hugging the woman next to him. There are also scenes of hugging and holding hands, even kissing. Seeing this, my hand couldn't help but tremble. It's really ironic. I have been married to Ethan for 3 years, yet we have never had any intimate gestures. This girl, who has known him for less than half a month, can actually hug and kiss him just because she looks like Sophia. That's all. A soft sound. A tear fell down. It wet the photograph. I suddenly realized that I was crying. The next day, I took the opportunity while Ethan was at the office. I had the assistant take me to find the woman who was close to him. We stopped her at the entrance of her neighborhood. She immediately looked very nervous. It was obvious she knew about my relationship with Ethan. Little sister. Interfering in someone else's relationship is not a good thing. To help her relax, I took her to my favorite cafe. The aroma of coffee there always calms me down. You should understand my relationship with Ethan, right? I said calmly. She was taken aback. It seemed she didn't expect me to bring up this topic so directly. Then she gently nodded. Just name your price. I continued. She looked up. Her eyes were filled with confusion. I smiled. Go on, weren't you being supported by him? Go ahead. How much does he give you? I can give you the same. But the condition is you have to leave him. She froze upon hearing this. Not a word was spoken. Her face suddenly turned red to the roots of her ears. Looking at her like this, she must be a fresh graduate from college. She hasn't encountered such a direct transaction and embarrassment before. Seeing that she didn't speak, I had my assistant hand her a card. Here, this card has 500,000 in it. That should be enough for him to support you for a year, right? Leave him. This money is yours. What do you think? She lowered her head. Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. It's with Ethan. It's not that kind of relationship. You call each other so affectionately, and yet you say it's not that kind of relationship. You two have already kissed. You two have kissed, still putting on a show in front of me. I was so angry that I almost laughed. Do as you wish. I forced a smile. It was a fake smile, however. I heard your grandmother is very ill. She is currently hospitalized. She urgently needs a large sum of money. You can choose not to take the money and continue to rely on pleasing Ethan to make money, but you have to understand. With his personality, he might abandon you one day. At that time, I really don't know where you can get the medical fees, I said seriously. The girl in front of me slightly shifted her gaze. After a while, she slowly reached out her hand towards the card on the table. The password is 6 zeros. I saw her lips move slightly. I immediately understood her meaning. I spoke up first. After saying that, I pretended to kindly add, within 3 days, you just need to completely disappear from his sight. Happy cooperation. She looked at me deeply. Finally, she squeezed out 2 words from her throat. Thank you. That little girl really keeps her promises. The night after I met her, Ethan stormed home in a rage. Emily, what's wrong with you? You have to interfere in everything I do. He shouted angrily. I turned my wheelchair, slowly facing him. I saw he was still staring at me with disgust. I tried to comfort him. I said softly, Ethan, she only cares about your money. And that Sophia, slap. A crisp sound of a slap immediately interrupted what I hadn't finished saying. Stop talking. What right do you have to mention Sophia? Emily, I know everything you've done before. If it weren't for you, I might have married her long ago. Because of me, because of what I did. It's just because I gave Sophia some money. She left so easily. Such a woman. Is she really worth his deep affection? But when I saw Ethan's reddened eyes and full of anger, the words that were on the tip of my tongue were swallowed back down. Ethan noticed my silence. Maybe he was even angrier. Suddenly, he grabbed my shoulders and then, his lips pressed down heavily. This was our first kiss. But it didn't end well. Ethan's movements were rough. He bit my lip hard. The taste of blood flowed into my mouth from the corner of my lips, but I didn't feel any pain at all. All that was left in my heart was numbness, something I once desired so much, and I got it under these circumstances. Suddenly, it felt meaningless. Even now, I'm still thinking when he kissed Sophia, that little companion, was he also this rough? Time seems to have suddenly slowed down. He finally let me go. I could barely breathe. I was gasping for air. He stared at me. He spat contemptuously, probably trying to spit out my blood that had flowed into his mouth earlier. So how about it, Emily? Isn't this what you've always wanted? He asked me with a hint of a cold smile. I looked up, because I was a bit short of breath earlier. My face was covered in sweat. My complexion also looked pale. I smiled at him. Go on, your kiss. I really like it. This might not be the answer he wanted. He suddenly seemed to lose control. He started to take off his clothes. Then he began to remove my clothes and pants. But halfway through, he suddenly stopped. He looked at me and said in a contemptuous tone, Oh dear, Emily, how could I forget in your current state? It's probably hard to attract a man's attention. After saying that, he quickly put on his shirt. He turned and went into the room, leaving me standing there alone. His words instantly drained the color from my face. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. I looked up at the night sky. My heart was filled with questions. I just couldn't understand. How did my relationship with Ethan end up like this? We could only find a bit of satisfaction by exposing each other's flaws. Once upon a time, our relationship was very close. The Anderson and Wilson families have always been family friends. Since birth, Ethan and I have had a special bond. I'm a few months younger than him. As a child, I always liked to follow him around, calling him Brother Ethan in my childish voice. I was like a little tail. Back then, I'm in great health. Every time I call out, Ethan will stop. He'll hold my hand. The elders are very happy to see us so close. They are all very pleased. Aunt Anderson often jokes with a smile. She says she wants to arrange a marriage for us. After all, at that time, my heart and mind were full of love for him. I was 7 years old that year. I attended elementary school with Ethan. We were even in the same class. I followed him around all day as usual. On the day of the spring outing, a large truck suddenly came rushing at us. At the critical moment, I pushed Ethan away without hesitation. When I woke up, I found that I couldn't move my legs. Mom was crying at the bedside. Grandpa Anderson stood by, his eyes filled with guilt and heartache. What happened to brother Ethan? How is brother Ethan? He's not hurt, right? The first thing I said after I woke up was, "How is Ethan?" The usually serious Grandpa Anderson, his eyes immediately turned red. Teardrops fell down, he said. "Good boy. Ethan is fine. It's just that when it comes to this," his voice choked. He stopped mid-sentence. "I don't care about that. As long as I know Ethan is fine, I'm satisfied." Later I understood. The words Grandpa Anderson didn't finish were, "Ethan has forgotten many things we experienced together." When the doctor told me I would never stand up again, I was completely consumed by despair. During that time, I held onto my mother's hand tightly every day. Teardrops kept flowing. Crying, I asked her, "Mom, will I become a useless person from now on? Mom, I really don't want to live anymore." Mom tried hard to hold back her tears, gently stroking my head, speaking softly. "Foolish child, don't say that carelessly. How could you be useless?" I was sobbing, muttering softly. "But look at me now. How can I be with brother Ethan in the future?" I didn't expect that. Grandpa Anderson happened to overhear this while passing by the ward. Grandpa Anderson has always valued loyalty and affection. That night, he arranged an engagement for me and Ethan. Days later, Ethan's health improved. He came to my hospital room. He saw my legs wrapped in bandages. His eyes turned red with pain. Teardrops fell. He asked, "Little sister, what's wrong with you?" Hearing this, I was momentarily stunned. I almost couldn't help but say, "Brother Ethan, when the truck came rushing towards you, it was I who pushed you away. Don't you remember?" But the words were on the tip of my tongue. I still held back. I really didn't want to make him sad. I lifted my head. I forced a smile. I asked softly, "I had a car accident. I might not be able to walk in the future. Brother Ethan, will you despise me?" "No," the boy answered without hesitation. That determined gaze instantly comforted my wounded heart. He added seriously, "I will never despise little sister Emily. From now on, I will be her legs." I believed Ethan's promise. He didn't let me down either when we were in school. He was always considerate, helping me carry books and pour water. He would also carefully push my wheelchair to where it needed to go. If someone made fun of me, he would immediately stand up for me. At that time, I often guessed in my heart, Ethan probably likes me too, but the layer of relationship between us hasn't been clarified yet. It suddenly became cold. In my second year of high school, a transfer student came to our class. Her name is Sophia. On her first day here, there were no empty seats in the classroom. Because my wheelchair takes up a lot of space, I happened to have no desk mate, so the teacher arranged for her to sit next to me. I thought my relationship with her would be second only to Ethan. We would become the closest friends, but unexpectedly, she developed feelings for Ethan. Since when did things quietly start to change? Perhaps it was when Ethan came to deliver my homework. His first question was, "Where is Sophia? Is she not here?" Maybe he felt awkward asking me directly for help. He wanted me to help him get Sophia out. It could also be that Sophia accidentally slipped and fell into his arms. He blushed as he shared this with me. I instinctively hit my leg hard, but still, I felt nothing at all. Yeah, no feeling, just like Ethan's feelings for me. Perhaps there are no feelings at all now, after all, compared to the sunny and cheerful Sophia. I'm just a disabled person who needs his care. During my sophomore year, Ethan was preparing to confess to Sophia. That day, I was also there, watching him flustered as he arranged the bouquet. I felt a pang of bitterness in my heart. After he finished trimming the last leaf, I hesitated and asked, "Ethan, you still remember our engagement?" He finally got it done. He happily picked up the bouquet, looked at it carefully again. Only then did he notice me beside him. "Emily, what did you just say? What engagement?" He asked me with a puzzled expression. I felt a bit uneasy under his unfamiliar gaze. I quickly turned my head. I forced a smile and said, "That was just a joke Aunt Anderson made when we were kids." After saying that, I added softly, "Back then, we were really close." Ethan looked at me, with concern in his eyes. He said softly, "Emily, you will definitely meet the right person for you. watching him walk away. I was stunned. It turned out the Anderson family never told him about our engagement. Ethan's confession went very smoothly. With the blessings of friends, he and Sophia sweetly became a couple. Their relationship continued throughout college. Because Sophia and I were good friends, Ethan didn't intentionally avoid me either. I could feel it. Besides providing some necessary help in life, he was slowly distancing himself from me in other ways. My heart, which had come alive because of him, it gradually calmed down. However, at my graduation dinner with Ethan, my heart was active once again. At that time, Grandpa Anderson and my parents discussed my marriage with Ethan in front of everyone. I didn't expect. That old engagement was still remembered by someone. Ethan looked at Grandpa Anderson in surprise. He tried to control his emotions. He said he loved Sophia. They planned to get married soon. He firmly insisted on canceling the engagement with me. Grandpa Anderson was furious. He raised his hand and slapped him. Seeing half of his face swell up, I suddenly felt a tightness in my heart. I couldn't help but want to reach out and touch him, but he immediately grabbed my hand. His eyes were filled with pleading. "Emily, you have been watching me and Sophia come this far. You will bless us, right?" Aunt Anderson quickly chimed in. "Yes, Emily, since Ethan likes Sophia so much, just let them be together. Moreover, when the engagement was set up, you were both so young. How could you understand what love is?" Grandpa Anderson looked at me and hesitantly said, "Emily, this matter is up to you to decide. If you don't like Ethan either, I do like him. This is the first time I've interrupted an elder. Just for that boy, I've almost liked my whole life, even if he doesn't like me." I turned to look at Ethan beside me. He looked surprised. His silence made me feel uneasy. I tentatively reached out my hand, wanting to hold his hand, but as soon as I touched him, he suddenly shook it off. He stared at me and shouted angrily, "Emily, you had already planned this day, didn't you? Don't think that this engagement means anything. I will marry you, even if I don't marry Sophia. I still won't marry you. That's it." He slammed the door and left. I was left standing alone. My heart felt empty. He wouldn't marry someone like me, who has a flaw, right? So it turns out in his eyes, I am just this kind of existence. At that moment, I wavered. I even thought about giving up, to let him be with Sophia, and to put an end to my more than 10 years of secret love. But one day, Sophia suddenly came to find me. "Do you like Ethan?" She got straight to the point. Her question was direct and sudden. I nodded. I was about to speak, but she interrupted me. "Give me 2 million. He belongs to you." "I'm out." I was shocked. I asked in disbelief, "Don't you like him too?" She stared at me, gave a cold smile. "What use is liking someone? Can you help me solve the company's troubles? The Anderson Group is unwilling to cooperate with me. I urgently need this money for cash flow. Don't you like Ethan? Just 2 million. You can have him." I looked at the person in front of me, once a friend, yet I felt very unfamiliar. I gritted my teeth, angrily said, "Ethan is not an object. I will give you 2 million. I will transfer it to you tonight. From now on, you take the money and never show up again." About these matters, I ultimately did not tell Ethan. To be honest, if I hadn't heard it with my own ears, I would find it hard to believe myself. Sophia turned out to be such a person, unknowingly. The sky was already slightly bright. Ethan finished washing up and came out of the room. I still had no sleepiness, still maintaining the posture from last night, sitting in the living room. Ethan sees me. A hint of disdain appears on his face. He says sarcastically, "I haven't slept all night. Emily, did what I said last night upset you?" He pauses for a moment, then says with a sarcastic tone, "If you really had any shame, you wouldn't have insisted on marrying me knowing your limitations. Back then, you knew you had difficulty walking." I stared blankly at him, the face I have followed for over a decade, the person I've liked for over 10 years. After a long while, I slowly open my mouth. My voice carries a hint of a sigh. "Ethan, let's get a divorce." Suddenly, I see Ethan's expression first twist, then it becomes fierce. He grabs my chin forcefully, forces me to look up at him. He says angrily, "Emily, you want a divorce, just because that comment last night upset you. Haha, Emily, I'll be clear with you. Don't dream about it. You ruined my relationship with Sophia back then, and now you want to get away easily. Absolutely not. That's all I have to say." He stormed out in anger, heading straight to the company. I sat alone in the empty living room. I smiled helplessly. Actually, does it really matter whether we divorce or not? My days in this world are already numbered. A car accident when I was 7 left me living in a wheelchair ever since. My parents and Grandpa Anderson spent a lot of money, invited the best doctor, trying every possible way to protect my legs, just so that I can live with dignity. But now, because the leg has been bad for too long, the doctor strongly advised me to amputate as soon as possible. Otherwise, it could lead to a serious infection. But I don't agree with amputation. I haven't mentioned this to anyone. I'm 26 years old now. I've faced quite a few difficulties in my life. I only hope to live with dignity. Since I proposed divorce to Ethan, it's been over a month. During this time, Ethan hasn't come home even once. I'm not sure if he feels annoyed seeing me, or if he's avoiding certain things. Olivia still messages me frequently. The content is mostly about which bar Ethan is at today, and that he's meeting a few girls again tomorrow. It's the same thing over and over. It's really boring to hear it so much. Suddenly, I remembered he used to be a sunny and happy boy. It feels like I turned him into what he is now. It seems like it's my fault. Ethan, I'm really sorry. If it weren't for that accident, if my legs were still intact, would there be a different ending for us? But if time could go back to the past, I want to. The young me would still push Ethan away in the moment of danger, without hesitation, from the moment I fell for him. Perhaps our fate was already unchangeable. I can't escape, nor can I avoid it. I had my assistant book a flight to Miami for me. Looking back, it's really ironic. I spent my whole life revolving around Ethan, and I haven't even seen the ocean. This time, I decided to live for myself once. Before I left, I contacted Olivia to tell her I was leaving. As the daughter of the Wilson family, I have few friends due to my physical limitations. Olivia is my only good friend. When she arrived, I could see a hint of reluctance in her eyes, but more than that, there was comfort. She immediately hugged me tightly and said, "Speak, Emily. It's time for you to live for yourself. Your parents and younger brother are at the Wilson group. If you encounter difficulties, I can also help. Don't worry. Stay as long as you want, Thank you." I held her tightly. In the end, I still didn't say it out loud. After this departure, I won't be coming back. I've been in Miami for 5 months. Olivia still messages me often. The topics we chat about have shifted from always being about Ethan to now mentioning my parents and younger brother more, and things at the company. However, messages about Ethan still sometimes fill the entire chat window. "You didn't tell Ethan you were leaving. I heard he got home and found all your things packed up. He was furious. You mentioned divorce to Ethan before you left. Divorce is probably for the best. Why is Ethan still unwilling to divorce? Isn't this what he has always wanted? Recently, he keeps seeking me out. I want to inquire about your news. Don't worry. I didn't tell him where you are. I'm sitting on the beach, looking through these messages. My forehead has unconsciously started to sweat. I reached out to touch it. Sure enough, I have a fever again. This is already the 3rd month since I was diagnosed with severe pyemia. The doctor said my organ function is slowly declining. I instinctively opened my phone. I clicked into Ethan's moments again. He still set it to show only the most recent month of updates. But strangely enough, I can't see a single post. He probably blocked me again. I forced a bitter smile, with a hint of bitterness at the corner of my mouth. Suddenly, a drop of bright red liquid fell on my leg, bringing me back to my senses. It turns out, the bitterness at the corner of my mouth is actually blood. That day, I sat by the beach from morning till night, watching the tides rise and fall, waiting for the moon to rise. I'm sitting in a wheelchair, slowly gliding towards that quiet beach.